Geweldig, hè? Je moet er niet over poetsen, hè? Je moet een beetje harder werken. Ja! Ja, dankjewel.
Waar ben je broertje? Waar ben je even? Wacht even. Hij weet wel dat het spannend. Ja, jongen.
Welcome to the first digging of positivity of this year. I'd like to thank you for an awesome last year. We've grown a lot and we've met a lot of awesome critters through this channel and the wonderful YouTube community. I am humbled by you all. In December we made a list of how many fur cons all over the world raised for charity. It was well over $1.1 million. And from the looks of it, in 2020 visitors will be even more generous. But before we start off compiling the list of this year, there were two charities from last year who did not make it to the Furry Charity Index, and I'd like to cover them. In the Netherlands, every year in December, the Dutch radio organizes Serious Request, and the Dutch furries did help along, collecting $263 for the Dutch Red Cross. And in the US, Sparkling Otter and his friends raised $1,210 for Out of the Darkness suicide prevention. And with these two lovely events covered, we entered 2020 with Furvester in Germany, raising $2,800 for the Tierheim Marina Hoffern, an animal shelter. Meanwhile, in the US of A, Adler and his beloved Blazon organized Flappy New Year with his friends, raising over $13,000 for Give Kids the World, a non-profit resort that is dedicated to providing vacations for children with critical illnesses and their families. Also, during the first weekend of 2020, we had Capital City FurCon, where $4,000 was raised for the ALS Association. And in the same weekend, we had Painted Desert FurCon, where no less than $15,000 was raised for the Phoenix Herpetological Sanctuary. I am so butchering that word. For those who are wondering, that's a sanctuary that promotes conservation of reptiles through education, rehabilitation, rescue and relocation. However, outside of the US there were many of us raising funds for various charities as well, such as the Japan Meeting of Furries, where they raised well over $12,500 for the Toy Botanical Park. And last, but certainly not least, we had 4,509 visitors of Further Confusion in the US, raising $20,452 for the Billy the Frank LGBTQ Center of Silicon Valley. It was difficult to miss those most dreadful forest fires in Australia. While on many places we see nature slowly recovering, the many efforts from everybody to lend a helping hand is much needed in what people refer to as one of the worst fire seasons to date. A bunch of furries, calling themselves the imaginatively unimaginative artists, started to raise money through their stream, and soon they raised a whopping $17,800 for the Australian Red Cross. Another initiative that stood out is by the Irwin family. They together saved over 90,000 animals from the bushfires. If their father, Steve Irwin, could see this, I'm sure that he has all the reason to be very proud of his family. You can still help these efforts, not just by donating, but also by knitting Joey pouches, carry bag pouches and much more. I have provided a link to all the patterns and the mailing addresses in the description. If knitting is not your style and you're more of a gamer, you can buy games from developers that support the Australian charities such as the makers of Cow the Kangaroo Round 2. If you buy their game on Steam, the proceedings will go to WIRES, the Wildlife Information, Rescue and Education Services Incorporated. Of course, you can find the link to the game below in the description. A lot of people try to help to make the world a better place, and one of the things they do is to drive an electric vehicle. Now for those things you need to charge on a regular basis, and we all need something to run on. But one might say this works for the smaller cars in order to be efficient. But it turns out that the biggest EV out there is a dump truck, and at a place where it operates it doesn't require a recharge at all. Like what? Turns out they devised a clever way to utilize the laws of gravity. The dump truck itself weighs 45 tons and ascends on a hill when it's empty. On top of that hill it is being fully loaded with very heavy ore, and on the way down it charges the battery through clever usage of its regenerative brakes, and in turn it uses that generated charge to go uphill again. Now that is what I call clever engineering. If you read the newspapers or check any news site online, one might say that the Earth is rapidly becoming a much more desolate and barren place. While we do face big challenges, many people are working towards a better tomorrow, and it shows. On our end of the world we see projects like Team Trees, and I was so happy to hear when NASA announced the world is quite literally a greener place than it was 20 years ago. On average, the coverage increased with 5%, and most of it came from two locations that I honestly did not expect: China and India. Of course there is much to be done, but I'm glad that the results are slowly becoming visible. Links to the NASA article with the journal with the exact data, of course, I have linked in the description. And back to that reason why you might get the idea that it's all doom and gloom around us: social media. While social media can be a good thing, it is often difficult to keep your emotions in check. After all, every day there's a controversy that needs addressing. Or is it? Kaba blah blah decided to dig in deeper, and it turns out not everything is as big and impactful as it seems. After seeing his video, it becomes ever so clear that when you see something that enrages you, double check where it comes from, check the source, and be critical on what you read on your timeline. But sometimes immediate action is required, right there and then. So thought Robbie Ryans, who was DJing at Further Confusion. He and his friends witnessed an assault in front of the venue when they decided to step in. A man tried to assault his girlfriend in her car, and her screams were not ignored. Before the abuser knew it, he was attacked by a flurry of furries. When the police arrived, he was booked in the Santa Clara County Jail, where undoubtedly he has some interesting stories to tell inmates when they ask what happened. Many other furs find a positive and creative outlet. One of them is dancing, but we all have to start somewhere. When I go to the dance floor, I look like a wobbling ditto. But if you want to be more, maybe this new series by Wolvini is a good start. You might have seen her on Euroferns, both as Jill or Coco the Corgi.
It isn't too often we get to hear about new games for the Super Nintendo. It's even rare that we get to hear about games featuring skunks. Today we get to talk about both. Some of you retro enthusiasts like myself may be familiar with the PS1 title Punky Skunky, a platformer where you play as a pogo-sticking, fart-slinging skunk. But what if I were to tell you that this game was originally intended for the Super Nintendo? Released in 1996 as a demo for the Super Famicom's TeleFURSion service, Coolie Skunk shares many of the same elements as its PS1 cousin, albeit with different graphical styles and game mechanics. 24 years later, the demo was found on a BSX cartridge being sold in Tokyo for $500. The cartridge was purchased by game preservationists and dumped to be made public. Moreover, ROM hacker Master Fox discovered that the entire game existed within the demo, and thanks to their efforts, we now have the full game from start to finish. The game's text is in Japanese, but it's not necessarily needed to play the game. Hopefully soon we can get a translation for this. A link of the game will be in the description.
Thank you for watching the first episode of this year. While no feature at this time, we'll make up for it next month on the 29th of February. Thank you very much for watching, liking and commenting, and of Of course, a special thank to the people sponsoring this channel. Ishnula, Els Dekkers, Taros, Chica, Kitako, Falconeo, Hanzana, Cosmic with a K and Score Chaser. See you all next month and stay awesome and of course, all the hugs.
Dit is jouw allereerste rijlessen. Wij gaan zo meteen kennis maken met het voertuig. Voordat we ermee gaan rijden zullen we altijd een paar zaken moeten controleren. Lekker rustig rijden, even kijken.
Nate, go, 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 go.
het zien kun je naar boven kijken.